Hello.
What's up?
Season 2, baby. We're back. We're back. There was probably some questions there for a while if we were coming back, but hey, life is busy.
It's
We're
too
all
bad
trying
we
to
couldn't
figure
get
it out.
the rights to Eminem's song. Oh, guess who's back?
Yeah, that would have been good. I think that's a little out of the podcast budget right now, I think. So
We'll try and slide in his DM, see how that works.
Oh man. Well, definitely glad to be back nonetheless. We like I said, life has just been crazy. We have been literally texting about the podcast for probably 2 months, and between moves, friends getting married, the weather, you name it, who knows, I don't, whatever else could happen. But anyway, none of that matters because we're back. Season 2, episode 1. And hey, sooner rather than later, right? That's all that matters.
We're not too far into the season. It's not like it's not July 4th, so I think we're doing
fair.
all right there.
That's fair. I don't know. We probably couldn't count it a comeback if we were that late into the season. So.
Yeah, that's just like a look in, just like hey.
Yeah. We beat Bryce Harper back, so that's all that matters. So
Not hard to do.
Even though I tell you, and this will be an interesting topic. Pick your doctor brain a little bit, but before we get too deep into the world. But did you see that he's supposedly coming back like the first week in May potentially, like 155 days post Tommy John surgery?
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, but you don't rule anything out these days. Like, I mean, it's definitely possible, but you always worry that they're just rushing back. Like, I totally understand wanting to get back, especially in sports. You always worry that your spot's going to get taken. Even somebody as good as he is, like, there's always somebody that's coming for your spot, so you don't want to give them a chance. But at the same time, if you push it too quickly, it's bound to go bad. So I hope he's not getting pressure to come back quickly. I mean, I doubt he is, but that's always a thing too. So, but we'll see what he does. I mean, like, I think Adrian Peterson started this crazy trend of just being able to bounce back quickly, and if he's ready to go, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, it's like pretty insane that just they're talking about him coming back primarily as a DH, I think initially, and so you wonder how much stress swinging is going to put on it, and apparently that's his first test, is he's going to try to swing and see. But I've seen pictures circulating of him, I guess, potentially playing first base as well, which obviously your arm not as important at first as it is in right field. So I think it's one of those like methodical comebacks where he's not jumping right back in and playing just like he was, but at the same time, still 155 days I mean, that's a major surgery. That's not, not a, let's go clean up a few things and get you back. It's, doing major stuff. So, yeah. And the article that I was looking at, and again, how we are with references, that research department's pretty underfunded, but the article mentioned that he would be the fastest documented return from Tommy John I've seen. So
and I hate to say this, but like part of me wonders if if that means something to him. Like, I wonder like if he's like, man, I kind of want to be that. Like, I want to be the fastest one back. I don't know, but I know Philadelphia will be excited to have him back. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and it's he's getting paid a lot of money, like you said, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily need to excuse the fact that he needs to rush it and potentially do something that's going to damage his career.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to. And honestly, that whole thing about maybe starting him at first base, like my first instinct to that is like, I don't like it, because that just tells me that, well, they probably don't think he's ready to actually go back. Like, so we're just going to do what we can with him until he is. And I think you're just playing with fire with that. Like, if they want to just take it easy just because he wants to, ramp it up, fine. But like, if they actually don't feel like he's capable of playing right field yet, then he's not ready to come back. Like,
yeah. So he's supposed to be meeting with a doctor, and they're gonna evaluate him. I guess he's gonna, like I said, take some swings, see what's gonna happen, and kind of go from there. But
since this is our first time back since the off season, the Phil has been pretty big off season for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Trey Turner, huge splash.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I don't know. For them to have gone to the World Series and then have been able to land the kind of recruiting class that they did, I mean, yeah, it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah.
But,
Kind of reminds you in football of Tampa. It's just like once
yeah.
you get that taste of victory, it's not hard to get people to want to come play with you.
No, absolutely. But to me, it's just, when you look at it still, like that's, aside from apparently the AL East, which we've talked about pretty heavily here as well, it's one of the better divisions really in
Oh
baseball.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I won't say top to bottom because the Marlins and the Nationals are still kind of trying to figure themselves out. Whereas the AL East, that is a top to bottom division right now, with that regard. But but the NL East has always played tough. The Braves, Mets, both won 100 games last year. So
look at I was gonna say, look at the last 2 years. It's been Atlanta and Philadelphia there. So I mean, like, yeah, that's a pretty strong division for sure. And Miami, they have some talent. They just haven't quite put it all together yet. But they're not scrubs.
No,
the Nationals are kind of scrubs, but
yeah. Yeah, I tell you, it's sad to see, but like they definitely pulled a Marlins in the sense of winning that World Series and then
falling apart.
That team looks nothing like that.
Yeah, it's a great and you see that in every sport, but it's a great example of, and you know who might be this year's version of that is San Diego, but you go all in on 1 year basically, and it might pay off. That's great, but if you don't sustain it, like, I'm not gonna say is it worth it, because if you win a World Series, like it's worth it. But at the same time, it's like now it's kind of like, well, it's like just that short term buzz. You don't get any sustained success, and it really kind of makes you wonder if you should do it that way. But
yeah,
like I said, they got a ring out of it, so I can't really complain, I guess. But
yeah. It still surprises me a bit that Trey Turner would want to come back to that division. Again, I understand they were in the World Series last year, but it kind of did feel like one of those Cinderella stories. It didn't feel like that was a team that's geared up for the next, 5 to 7 years of being content. I mean, they could be, but
that's
at the same
thing,
time,
though. I think, like, you got to, in a way, I know we don't like doing this because it's an Atlanta heavy podcast, but you kind of have to give credit, though, to Philadelphia, kind of looking ahead of things and saying, like, hey, we don't want this to be a one-off. Like, we're going to try and build something long-term. Like, I think that's good foresight.
Oh, I don't blame the Phillies at all. I just question, like, Trey. I guess I just look at it more from the Trey Turner aspect of, there's probably some other places. I don't think he was sold on being on the West Coast forever. So
I was gonna say, where's he from?
I feel like it's eastern side. I know he went to. I know he went to NC State, but I don't think.
Yeah, so he's from Boynton Beach, Florida. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was maybe he was missing the East Coast. So who knows? But
yeah. So nonetheless, so sorry to get us on our Bryce Harper tangent there to start the podcast, but
it's as good a place as any to start.
Yeah, but no, again, we're happy to hop on and just get the second season started here. This is not something we wanted to necessarily just be like a one season wonder, so to speak. So we're definitely happy to be back talking some Braves, talking some Orioles. We've been chatting a lot in the group text. Again, we've picked a pretty solid time to be doing a podcast for the teams that we pull for. There's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of fun things going on. But we will just start real quick and just let everybody know that we do have a new email address for the podcast. Coming in hot. We're official. Have our own domain. So you can now contact us if you would like to email us any questions or segment ideas or whatever the case may be. So we're at contact@first2thirdpod.com. That's first, the number 2, the word third, pod.com. So again, happy to always hear from anyone that wants to shoot in messages or anything like that. But that was an exciting season 2 edition. So we've hopefully got a lot more fun new things coming up. But yeah, so we'll kind of just jump into the first month of the season here. I misspoke when Barrick and I were talking before we hopped on here and said the first half of the season, and yeah, we're not, thankfully, not that far in. So, but yeah, the Braves, we typically start there. At one point, one of the hottest teams in baseball. One of the looked honestly probably outside of the Rays looked like one of the best teams in baseball, and unfortunately ran into a bit of a sluggish streak here. We took the first two games of the San Diego series this past weekend, or 2 series ago, and then lost the last game of that one before coming home and playing the Astros, and we got swept, unfortunately, by the Astros. So that's never great. We had honestly pretty good showings from the starting pitching staff, but the bullpen kind of just faltered a little bit late, giving up some uncharacteristic runs, I would say, late. Offense put up decent runs against that Astros pitching staff, I would say as a whole. But yeah, the bullpen kind of just let us down. So, I don't know. It's been interesting. Have you been catching any of the games here lately?
Yeah. I think it kind of feels like to me like you put on the screen Braves hot or cold. Like they're kind of both. Like they're lukewarm, but I think they have so much talent that it's still so early in the season. I think they're just still kind of feeling their oats and trying to figure out how are we going to put this together moving forward. And I don't know. I have very little worry that they're going to figure it out. And Houston's, obviously you don't want to get swept, but Houston's not exactly a scrub. So, I think it's one of those things where they're going to have a few series like that where it's just like, this didn't go great. But I think when it's all said and done, they're still going to be the contender everybody kind of thinks they should be and will be. So do you think going forward is the bullpen going to be the biggest concern this year? You think?
I think it has the potential to be. Unfortunately, there's been some guys came back in the starting rotation. You're looking at a starting rotation of Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton, Bryce Elder has come out and looked really good so far this year as a young guy. Started the season with a couple young rookies as well, Dylan Dodd, and shoot, as I'm literally saying the words, the other guy's name completely lost on me. But they came out and had some okay starts, but again, they're rookies. I don't think anybody expected anything too crazy. But when you're talking about those four guys, at the top of your rotation, I would say the starting pitching staff's not really our concern. The bullpen, I think, was we lost Kenley to free agency. He chose to go up to Boston, but we added an arm in Nick Anderson from the Rays. Really live arm, throws really hard, and has looked honestly really good so far. AJ Minter, unfortunately, he was kind of the crux of a couple innings this weekend. Gave up some of the runs, but he also has shown up in tremendously big moments for the Braves over the last couple years. So I don't think he's a question mark, but he definitely has moments where, just like we're talking here, you get hot or cold, and it's just a matter of making sure you're hot at the right time.
Yeah.
The biggest disappointment's probably been Joe Jimenez. We picked him up from the Tigers in a weird trade. I don't really follow why it was made, but he's kind of been the one inconsistency, I would say, out of the bullpen. Jesse Chavez, he had a rough inning, but again, I mean, that guy just comes in and gets outs really at a premium. So, I don't know. I guess that's a long-winded answer of saying there's guys that have proven themselves that are in that bullpen before, but at the same time, they can also be streaky. And so, I don't think I think it's just a matter of when the slip-ups happen and how they're able to mitigate innings. That was the thing against the Astros. They weren't able to stop kind of the fall off the cliff moment and
Yeah.
and momentum. So
And you never know who they might go out and try and grab too. So
absolutely.
yeah.
But the offenses look great. Hit by the injury bug just a little bit. That's been part of kind of like you were saying, the lukewarmness as well. Injury bug hit. Freed was on the IL. Wright was on the IL. Michael Harris the second is still on the IL, dealing with some back issues.
That's a big one.
That is a big one. Travis d'Arnaud on the IL with a concussion. That doesn't look great right now. That's his fourth one of his career. So, baseball players don't get too many. So the fact that we're sitting here talking that he's had four, that's that's quite a bit. So hopefully he's making a quick recovery. But we've had some pretty big names go down. But at the same time, the Braves went on an 8-game winning streak without some of those guys. And so, again, it just goes to show there are capable guys of stepping up and, getting you through some of this. But the offenses look great.
I was going to say, one of those new names you haven't mentioned yet is, Sean Murphy has looked really good. He's been impressive.
Yeah. Started the season out a little slow. But I think, again, new team, new routines. He's also, he was used to being an everyday catcher there for a while. And when he came over, him and d'Arnaud were splitting that time between catching and DHing. And I think that was a little new to him. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when d'Arnaud does come back, because Murphy really kind of hit his stride when d'Arnaud went down and became the everyday catcher. And so, we'll see if that continues. But yeah, I mean, talk about off-season pickups, huge.
I think he's been a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more stable than maybe people thought. But
yeah, absolutely. And his
what
bats
do
really
with
come around.
Ozuna?
So, I don't know. I am just. I was having this conversation with someone today. The Braves ownership. They are not an ownership that I would say enjoys just wasting money. And so I feel like there was an article that came out again. Mark Bowman, one of the beat writers for the Braves, posted it either Friday or over the weekend, that the Braves had apparently tried to trade Ozuna to the Marlins on two occasions now, once at the trade deadline last year and then once in the offseason this year. And their main target of return was Jorge Soler, which obviously most Braves fans would love to have him back. But I was telling the guy today that I think, honestly, what held it up is I think the Braves are not willing to eat a good majority of that contract, and a lot of other teams are obviously not willing to take it on. And I think Braves ownership has probably given Alex Anthopoulos kind of a directive that says, like, you can't trade him and eat money. Like, we're not going to pay a guy to be on another team.
Yeah.
So you're either going to be able to move him and the contract, or he's on the team. We're not,
or you just have to get an incredible return,
that too, which you're just not going to,
probably not.
with the way he's playing and just the other.
It's another good example of, and I'm not, the Braves obviously do a really good job with this usually, but it's another example where, like, some of this monopoly money that gets thrown around in these contracts is just like good for the players, but like from a team standpoint, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, and it's what's crazy about baseball too, is because a lot of these guys get paid off one season, and maybe two, and sometimes it truly is just lightning in a bottle. And kind of with him, he put together one good year in St. Louis before his contract came up, and then the Braves picked him up, and he had a really good first year with the Braves.
Yeah.
But it's been pretty bad ever since, just between the off the field issues, and then he really hamstrings you sometimes defensively, which is sad. And then this year, I mean, he's hitting below 100. So, that's where I'm still a little baffled personally. I don't understand why he keeps getting put out there.
Yeah.
But left field that's been a hole, honestly, even all the way back to the World Series team for the Braves. That the outfield was outfilled by committee that year. And so we've been able to shore up right field with Acuna coming back, center field with Michael Harris, emergence. So left field has been that hole. He's not the fill for it. Eddie Rosario has shown glimpses of being able to be that, but he hasn't been consistent.
Probably more of a bridge guy.
I've personally really liked Sam Hilliard
Yeah.
so far, filling in for Michael Harris. It'd be interesting moving him over there potentially when Harris returns, but I mean that's a glaring hole, definitely. So I would say, if you wanted to put question marks around the Braves, I would say you can put a very small question mark around the bullpen. But I would say the biggest question mark, honestly, is probably between in left field. I mean, that's so. We'll see. They've shown good prowess over the last couple off or mid-season acquisitions. So hopefully there's somebody out there that they can go out there and get. But it's fascinating. Jazz Chisholm was rumored to be potentially on the move.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much all off season, and there were
Even
a few
recently.
times where the Braves, were a team that he was being linked to weirdly, or linked to, I would say, in the sense of he said he wanted to play in Atlanta, basically.
And who wouldn't right
now?
I mean, like.
But what's fascinating has been this year his position switch. So he was primarily a second base shortstop, and this year he's been playing the outfield. And so I'm like, I mean, that would be pretty cool. Go pick up a young guy like that and put him in left field. So, I don't know. Time will tell, I guess. But
yeah, and they got some fun games coming up. We talked off camera about the Mets series coming up. That's obviously a big one. Just saying, May 5th, 6th, and 7th. Just saying, there may be some relocation going on. Myself to Atlanta.
There you go.
Yeah. Braves Orioles is going to be a lot. That's going to be a lot of fun. I really think we should try and figure that out.
We had circled that on the calendar last year.
Yeah, and then you guys got Boston, and then looks like Toronto. So I mean, there's some fun things coming up. So they'll start to kind of get into the meat of the schedule and really see what they got. I think, going over their roster, there's a few holes, like you mentioned, left field, but there's not a lot of holes. So that, I mean, you got to feel good about that. I think it's definitely it's not a finished product, but it's definitely not broken.
No, absolutely. Yeah, again, sometimes you got to be polarizing. I'm by no means worried by any means about the Braves or what's going on, or
let's talk about
I would like an everyday.
Like, what do you see? Do you think it's going to be a pretty easy take for them in the division, or Mets got you worried at all, or?
Yeah, I mean the Mets are still a really good team, and they're not fully up to full speed either.
Right.
Verlander, I don't think has pitched, maybe he's pitched one game this year. I can't remember if he went on the DL before the season started or if it was right after a first start.
But I can't remember. I think it was after a first start, but
so he's not pitching right now. But that offense is still stout. I would say their biggest loss, as sad as it was the Edwin Diaz injury from the World Baseball Classic.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
They invested a lot in him in the offseason, and he for last year was probably the Cy Young bullpen arm.
Yep.
So that's kind of missing at the back of their bullpen. They lost Trevor May to free agency this year as well. That was another arm out of that bullpen. So, but I mean, again, they still worry me. They're a good team. So I think it's going to come to. I said this at the beginning. I think it's really between them two. I think the Phillies, like historically the last few seasons, I think they'll hang in there for a good part of the season, but I think the Mets and the Braves will probably pull away probably the last month of the season. And then, but I think Philly will still be right there for that wild card spot, just like last year. So, I don't think that's going anywhere, but I do see it coming down to a Braves Mets division again.
Yeah, it should still be a really fun division race for sure.
Yeah. So, I would say my only wish list item right now would just be an everyday left fielder. If we could find somebody that would solidify that, I would feel a lot better about the team. So
Yeah. Is there anybody? I don't know the minor league system for the Braves as well. Is there anybody coming up?
We have unfortunately we've gutted that farm system pretty heavily
I knew
the
that
last
part.
the last couple years. Great return.
Yeah.
Matt
Yep.
Olson and Sean Murphy have been excellent
Yep.
additions, so I'm not saying it wasn't worth it. But when you look at our, like top 100 prospects, it could not be any different than what the Orioles look like right now. When you look at the Orioles top prospect
Yeah.
list, all of their estimated time of arrivals are like 2023, 2024. When you
Mhm.
look at the Braves, it's like 2025, 2026. So it's a lot of young guys. And so I don't think there's anybody on the cusp right now
Yeah.
that's I don't know that I've at least seen. I'm not saying
And
that there's
that
not
and
somebody
that
down there, but
probably makes it hard too to put together a nice trade package for a legit one as well. So
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, and I guess I don't really recall many pretty stout left fielders coming into that free agent class either. Weirdly, so I don't really think there was much that we could have probably went out and got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, there's probably somebody that I'm kind of completely blanking on, but yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, that would kind of be my only wish list item right now. So,
Yeah.
but speaking of the Braves, they have thankfully kind of put the woes behind them, and currently doing pretty well against the Marlins. There's one in particular event happening that we can't talk about on the podcast because even though we're not superstitious, we're a little stitious. So, but yeah, it's definitely good to see, and that was a huge point of the Brave season last year. And we've talked about this at length with so many other teams. You're going to have those tough series against the Astros and the Dodgers and the Padres and all these other playoff bound teams or playoff caliber teams, but you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to. And especially in the Braves division, the Marlins and the Nationals are the teams that you have to beat. And so, we didn't have like a preseason episode to talk about it, but they did shift the scheduling a little bit this year. And so you're only playing your divisional teams, I think it's 16 times this year instead of 19. So that's an entire series essentially removed from your season. And so I would say for the Braves, for those two teams, they probably need to win, I would say 10 to 12 of those games between those two teams.
Mm-hmm.
So 10-6, 12-4, just to, because that gives you more leeway against the Phillies and the Mets and, some of those other teams. So,
Yeah.
So we'll certainly see what's going on with that. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on the Los Bravos?
No, I mean, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see. We'll see where it goes, but I think they're still going to be a really, really strong contender, and that's exciting for our group and for our podcast because it should provide a lot of things to talk about, which is awesome.
Absolutely. So now we have the other team of the podcast, and I mean, what in the heck is going on in Baltimore, man?
Well, it's actually a really good segue because you mentioned, you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, and that's kind of what's going on right now with Baltimore. They haven't had a really tough schedule yet. They've played a lot of teams. The White Sox are probably the best team that they've played recently. So they haven't had like this big gauntlet. But again, if you're playing, you got to play the schedule you got, and you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. So they're doing that.
Yep.
And they've just it's carried over from last year, and the fact that it's been just a lot of fun to watch. They're super young. There's a lot of passion. They're having just a blast, both on the field and in the dugout. And they're just it's just a really good group. It's a lot of fun, and I think they're going to be pretty good. I almost worried, like you said, we didn't have a before season podcast, but one of the things I would have brought up if we did is that the expectations are actually. I mean, they're not high, but they're not low either. Like, people, I think last year woke up a lot of people to, hey, the Orioles are actually pretty decent. So now, it's this. I feel like the national media has got this like playoff or bust kind of mentality. And I don't really know if it's quite that to that point, but they are a lot of fun, and they are, they're off to a good start. They definitely are going to have their hands full still with the division. Is still, still the AL East. You're not, playing quite as many games in the division, which is great, I think, but you're still being stacked up against the Yankees and Boston and Tampa. So it's still going to be a hard road, but they've got, they're having fun. They're playing good baseball. And like you mentioned, they've got a lot of young guys that still, have to, some guys that are in the majors that we still get to see a lot from, and some guys that we still haven't seen yet. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. It's really, and Baltimore deserves this after so many years of just being absolutely terrible. It's nice to actually have some guys to cheer for, and some guys to actually watch their progression. It's been a while since they had that. So I don't know about winning the division, but I do think that they're going to be fun, and they're going to be a tough out. And if we could sneak in to the playoffs, Camden Yards will be a lot of fun. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, one quick side tangent here. Spencer Strider unfortunately did lose the no-hitter in the bottom of the eighth. So unfortunately,
they're still crushing it, right?
They are 8-0 still, which is great. But the no-hitter was lost. But no, I totally agree with you. I would say it's interesting when you look at their schedule, right? So they started the season losing 2 to Boston, but Boston was a big question mark. They added a few good pieces. Nobody really knew what was going to happen with them. But then also with the same thing with the Rangers, the second series of the season, the Rangers have been one of the better teams in baseball, probably surprisingly to some people. They've had some pieces, but they've just never really been able to bring them together. Yeah. But the Orioles take 2 or 3 on the road from them. So, that's solid. But yeah, you're right. The Athletics, the White Sox, the Nationals, the Tigers, being able to run the gamut of that whole stretch and only lose 2 of those games, doing what you got to do, and then picking up a win tonight against the Red Sox. So, and I would say, honestly, when you look at that division, as crazy as it is, the Red Sox probably the weaker team of the division. I guess I know
that's what the general consensus was going into the season. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they develop into, because I don't know, maybe it's like semi recency bias, but it's hard to imagine Boston just being really terrible. So I feel like they're going to be better than people think, but maybe they are the worst team in the division, but I think it's still going to be a strong division top to bottom. So they could be last in division, but still be a pretty good team. And I think, like I said, I think Baltimore is going to be in the mix, and they're probably going to ruin some teams' hopes, and they're also going to, they're going to still make some stupid mistakes. Like I said, they're so young that there's going to be some slip ups, or maybe some, 10-game slumps or something like that. But they're just they're putting it together in a really, really good way, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Have you had any surprises from any of your young guys yet that you kind of were like, definitely didn't think they would start, handling it this early?
I think you have to start with Adley, right? So everybody expects him to be really good, but he's just been absolutely phenomenal to start the year. So if he can keep this clip up, he's going to be incredible. So he's been exciting. Like I said, everybody expected him to be good, but he's just come out on fire. Ryan Mountcastle has come back. So he had a pretty, I wouldn't say down year, but he slimped, last year, and he's come back with vengeance. I don't know what he did differently, or if it's just, rest or whatever, but he's figured it out. Some guys that have kind of, and even like, I would say Kyle Gibson's been really good. Again, he's somebody that, like, you're kind of like, okay, he's probably going to be pretty good, but he's done exactly what they need him to do. And for a pitching staff that's really been the weak point for the last couple of years, that's really exciting. People are going to say Grayson Rodriguez is kind of underperformed, but he's only had 2 starts, I think, so far. And he's a young guy with a lot of expectations. It's going to take some time for him to really,
Sure.
pull it together. Gunnar Henderson's, he's had ups and downs, but I think he's played well. I think the name of the game for them really is nobody's really disappointed yet, which is great.
Yeah.
Even the guys they brought in the offseason that weren't like huge additions, but again, Kyle Gibson's done good. Let's see, O'Hearn has been pretty good. So they brought some guys in that were not big name guys, but they played their part, and I think that's been a big thing. If there's one person that kind of has underperformed, it's probably Cedric Mullins so far. He's somebody that I think has a lot of big expectations after the past couple of years, but I think he's gonna figure it out. He's just maybe not quite the hot start that everybody wanted, but yeah, then they're really 1 to 2 pitchers away from really, I think, figuring it out, and they may have those pitchers already, but they just need time to
Yeah.
develop them. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And then they've still got guys in the minors that need to come up. I mean, Jackson Holiday's the big one that everybody's watching. We're big on this podcast with Connor Norby, so he's somebody that we're definitely watching. And maybe not this year, but he probably has a spot in the next couple of years if he keeps it going.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think, and it's good to see. Camden Yards has been a lot of fun. Like, there's been a lot more fans. There's been a lot more excitement, and that part's really good for the area. None of us. Well, Kenny kind of lives close to there, I guess, but none of us really live in
Yeah.
Baltimore, so we don't have a day-to-day pulse on it. But it's you can definitely tell a difference watching the games. There's people are there, they're excited, they're on their feet, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
And you gotta. Last thing I'll say is you got to give it up to the management. I think they put together a really great plan. They've stuck to it, even if it's been brutal at times, but they've really got a great plan that they've just been slowly implementing, and I think it's starting to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I don't know if I'd sleep on Connor
Yeah, maybe,
potentially getting the call up this year. I mean,
maybe.
you know, the problem he's got right now is you guys brought in Adam Frazier in the
Yeah.
offseason, and
Yep.
so that's a veteran guy sitting there, but honestly he hasn't been overly impressive this year so far. He's hitting 219
Yeah.
with 2 home runs. But you look at Connor down in AAA, and I'm not saying it's apples to apples, obviously, but Connor down in AAA is hitting 289 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and 17 RBIs. So I mean, he's definitely performing down there. So
Yeah, we'll see.
he gets on a hot streak here, month of May. Bring him up for the summer. Could bring some more youthful energy to that team.
Yeah. The other guy they got to figure out what to do with is Jorge Mateo, because he's he's great defensively. He doesn't bring as much to the plate as you would want, but he's he's a really good utility player that's just kind of like they keep shifting him around. He's played third, he's played second, he's played shortstop. He's almost played everywhere on the infield. And it's just kind of like you can't really find a permanent home for him, but you definitely don't want to just sit him on the bench because he's got too much talent just to do that. So it's in his speed. Like, his speed is just incredible. So he's another one where it's kind of like, well, if we bring Connor Norby up, that's great, but it's kind of like where do we put these other couple guys? So yeah, but it's a great problem to have. And can we how do we feel about the homer hose?
Well, what was the other one that they called it? The
dong bong.
The dong bong.
Come on.
That one I could
love
not
it.
get behind. That one I could not get behind.
I love it. They're claiming this this water theme because they do the sprinkler if you get a double and so on and so forth. But I love it. Again, it's just fun. Like, I know I'm not even gonna call it controversy because that's too strong of a word. But I know some people didn't like it. But I mean, you can't tell me they're not just having a blast. No, you gotta love it.
No, I'm a full supporter of the homer hose. Public adversary to the dong bong. So But no, I think across baseball, it's really been cool to watch teams in this evolution. We had some pretty deep discussions about this last year, in some episodes talking about uh, celebrations and the evolution of the game and where it's going. And you didn't see it as much last year. There were some teams that were doing things and some that weren't. But I kind of feel like every team kind of has a theme or a thing that they're going with now. And I'm all for it. I think it shows baseball to be an evolving sport. It's not just a sport of out of shape white dudes that barely run, and
Yeah.
we've got all these performance enhancing drug issue. We're moving past that, and we're shedding light onto this. We can have fun. We can do things differently. So whether it's your Homer hose, I think my favorite one that I've seen is the Mariners Trident. Like, that thing is just legit.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I gotta say, I just speaking on this topic, I'm not the biggest fan of the Braves Homer helmet. It just looks really goofy. It's kind of funny on some of them, but I miss Heredia and his swords, and I miss some of that celebration. So I don't know. I don't know who's in charge of these celebrations on the team, but maybe we need to try to get a podcast guest on or something. And
it's not going to be long before that's like actually a paid position, right? Like, it's somebody like actually like on the staff, like that's their job. But and I feel like I can speak to this again from a Baltimore standpoint, where the people that don't like these celebrations are the people that are losing, the teams that are losing. Because again, it wasn't that long ago the Orioles were awful, and trust me, it's like I couldn't care less about these celebrations because we never got to use them. Sure. And it's just like, okay, great, you have your fun. But now if you're winning, you're like, this is amazing. I love every bit of it. So it really comes down to that, and it's really just pure fun. And if you're if you're winning and having a good time with it, I'm all for it. I love it. So the Homer helmet. My problem with that is it's not. I don't feel like it's very original, right? I feel like that's kind of like, and maybe not technically been done before, but it feels like it's been done before.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's also weird because like a lot of these, celebrations seem to be a little team oriented as well.
Yeah.
And that one isn't. It's just, somebody puts this giant helmet on the guy and he just kind of, does some stuff in the dugout, and then they take it off and everybody moves on. I don't know. Like I said, the public plea to figure out a new something. So I don't know, but Homer hose I can get behind. The sprinkler doubles is pretty hilarious too. That's pretty good.
I like it. I like that it's all water based. There's a theme there, so that makes it fun. But and of course, if you get a walk off, the whole Gatorade shower plays into it as well. So it's something we're gonna have to keep an eye on for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll spam some Twitter folks, and
I might get my own Homer hose. I'm just saying, like, that might be something you're gonna see me on the podcast with. I'm just
oh Lord,
just throwing it out there.
Whew, you're gonna have some rough mornings. You start bonging some beers every time the Orioles hit a home run.
Remember, it's water. That's what they said.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, hydration. It's important, kids.
Yep.
So that's too good. That's too good. Any other thoughts on the Orioles? I mean, again, they're like you said. I mean, you kind of nailed it too. They're a fun team. They're young. It's exciting to kind of feel the excitement there again. Obviously for multiple reasons, the podcast has some ties to the Orioles, but just us, Robbie and I spending the summers up there and just being around people in the organization, it was very fascinating. And they weren't as bad as they had been during that time, but they also weren't like great either. And so again, it's nice to get the winning feeling going and people having fun. And like you said, people actually showing up to the ballpark. So,
and I feel like I feel like the guys that they have on this team, like, it's been a while, probably going back to like Adam Jones and Nick Markakis. It's been a while since it felt like the Orioles had guys that were going to be around for a long time, like guys that you could buy their jersey and not feel bad about it because they're going to be gone next year. So I think that's a lot of fun, and yeah, it's fun to be able to throw on an Orioles jersey, go out to the store, and not feel like an absolute goon. So that's kind of fun.
People ask you why you're dressing up for Halloween in April.
No, no, they just come up. They used to come up and just say, "I'm so sorry." I'm just like, well, yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
That's funny. That's funny. Too good. Too good. Well, we didn't really talk about this much before, so just don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but kind of I'd say last segment for the conversation today. Just chatting about what have been some of the kind of first month surprises that you maybe weren't necessarily expecting to see, or player performance, team performance,
I
anything
think
like
we
that.
already touched on it. I think it's Texas, right? I think it's Texas. They've got. It felt like they had a plan in place that was supposed to take off in like 2 or 3 years, and it's starting. And I'm not saying I can't remember. I didn't pick them to win the division in our picks, which we got to go over at some point. But I mean, yeah, I think they've been really good, and I think that's going to be an exciting team to watch. Maybe towards the end of this year, start of next year. I think it's a team that you're going to have to really, really take seriously. I think the teams that have been disappointing are the teams that we kind of expected to be I don't, and you might have a better answer than I do, but I haven't really come across anybody yet that I'm just like, oh, I had really high expectations for them and they look terrible. I don't feel like that's happened. Maybe the White Sox, maybe, but I actually still have hope that they're going to turn it around personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's been more good surprises and there's been disappointments so far.
Yeah. Yeah, the couple that kind of came to my mind, one was a team performance. Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
clue what's gotten into the water of the Pirates. 15
Well,
and
they got
seven.
Three Rivers, so it's it's
Yeah,
it's one of those that's got
yeah,
better.
yeah. But I mean, 16 and 7, leading the division
Yeah,
by half a game.
yeah,
23 games in. Uh, I think all of us would have lost money if we would
yep.
have, been asked if the Pirates would be anywhere other than last in that division.
Now again, it's still early, but
Again, I no, now trust me. By
yeah,
no means do I think they're going to end up being competitive and winning the division. But again, to be in first place potentially at
yeah.
the end of the first month of the season, that is a very different Pittsburgh Pirates team than we've been accustomed to for a very long time.
Hmm.
They also had a really kind of good feel good moment this week, pulling up a guy from AAA. Again,
Yeah, yeah,
research department letting us down. I couldn't tell you the guy's name, but he's apparently played in almost 1,500 minor league games, and he's getting his first call to the big leagues.
yeah.
That's
That was
pretty.
awesome.
I can't imagine. That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
Uh, that's a lot of grinding.
yeah. Good for him.
So yeah,
And you
super
know what that
super
else
super
else
pumped.
that is? That's a lot of family support.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kudos to his
So
family.
that's right. So good for him, and good for all that. My second surprise actually has to do with the rule changes, and
Mm,
so my second surprise, honestly, has been how one well adapted the pitch clock has
yep,
been with teams, and two how well received it's been as a whole from
yep.
fans and others. I think it's doing its purpose. It's doing its job. The average game time is about 2 hours and 38 minutes, I think. So it's doing exactly what the MLB wanted. Uh, you don't see a ton anymore of these violations. You'll see maybe one, maybe two a game. And typically there's a reason, and teams shrug it off and move on. Um, but that's kind of been a surprise to me, looking at it. I was, if I'm being honest, I was kind of opposed to it.
I was gonna say that I didn't want to cut you off, but like I was
Yeah,
gonna ask like without going too deep into it because maybe it's a topic for another time. But like I feel like most of the guys in our group were kind of softly against it at the beginning. I feel like I was in the minority because I think this was way overdue.
yeah,
But yeah, I agree. I think like it's really been surprising how well it's worked. And I'm happy about it.
yeah, yeah. I guess for me, baseball's always been one of those sports where there wasn't a clock. Uh,
Right.
the game played itself out the way that it played itself out. And so the idea now of putting a clock on it that has ramifications, like it's not like it's like a warning and,
Yeah.
then it happened, it's like, an immediate ramification like we saw in spring training when it first happened, where you've got the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth and the dude gets a pitch clock violation and
Yeah.
ends the game. Like, that's pretty insane. So so here's where I'm at. I like it. The pace of play is good. There's a lot more action happening, which obviously for the casual fan is very good. That's what they want to see. The game times, it is nice that a 7:00 game is done by 9:45 and you can still go to bed at a reasonable hour. That's pretty cool. For the most part. At times, and maybe this is just me still being a little old fashioned, old school, there are times where it does feel rushed. And again, playing baseball for as long as I did, you never perform well in a rush. That's why batters would call time. That's why pitchers would step off the rubber. That's why they would walk around the mound, was to really get back in control and not feel in a rush. And so I think there just needs to be a little bit more leniency, like the two disengagements off the mound by the pitcher, the one timeout for a hitter. I just think you could still do this, but it could be a little slower. To me, it just feels like we went from the Stone Age where it was taking 35 seconds to throw a pitch to now they're hardly breathing before the next pitch is thrown. And I feel like it feels like too big of a swing on the pendulum. So to me, I kind of feel like we should come back a little bit towards the middle, but once you get these guys used to it, it's going to be hard to go backwards. And so I don't see the league changing this a ton. I will say two things that I'm interested in seeing long term. What kind of effect does this have on pitchers? Because pitchers are working a lot harder. They're throwing pitches faster together. So is that going to have arm issues? Are we going to see guys not going deep enough into games? What kind of effect it has on pitchers? I'm also very interested once we get to playoff baseball and there's tension and there's crowds that are going bananas. How, there's moments where you need to just take a breath for a minute. How is this pitch clock going to come into play? And I'm interested to see public opinion of if the pitch clock has a direct impact on the outcome of a game. Again, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, team down by 1, full count, pitch clock violation on the batter, strike 3, he's out. Like, we can't end a playoff game like on a pitch clock, can we?
So a couple of things. One other thing I'm interested to see that you didn't mention was what effect does this have on attendance too? Because I really do think there is something to that psychologically where, your casual fan in the past, maybe it's you and your girlfriend or something. And you're like, hey, you want to go to a baseball game? And she's like, well, yeah. How long? How long is it going to be? And you're like, you have to be like, probably at least 3 hours, maybe more. Yeah. Now you can get away with saying, maybe a couple hours. Okay, that it just feels different. So I do think it'd be interesting to see if that plays any role on attendance. If people feel like, okay, I can afford that time to go to the ballpark now. The other thing too is I think it's interesting that we haven't heard that much complaining about it. At least I don't think so. Yeah. Like I don't feel like we've heard a lot from pitchers or batters really just being like, this is crap. This isn't working. And I'm kind of surprised. I thought there would be more, grumbling about it, at least at first. And I wouldn't say this is playing devil's advocate, but to your point about, can we end a playoff game like that? I would say, doesn't this kind of put more onus on the managers to kind of like, talk to their players, before that kind of, to kind of realize that, hey, we're about to be in this kind of position. I need to talk to my pitcher. I need to talk to my batter. Say, hey, listen, you got to remember the clock. Like, we have to have a plan for this. Like, I feel like that, yeah, obviously we wouldn't want to see like a really important game end on a pitch clock violation. it just doesn't come off the tongue very well. But I do think that it can be avoided. Like if you have a manager that's really dialed in and he's kind of making those guys aware of it before that kind of time. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's a fun social experiment. But I think just in a nutshell so far, I've been pleased with it. I like it.
Yeah. And again, I know I'm sitting here talking about the what ifs of how things could happen and all of that, but I don't know. Playoff, I mean, everybody knows it. Playoff anything. NFL, NBA, MLB, the feelings are different.
Cricket.
You're moving different. And all of a sudden, you've got a guy again, and I hate using the like extreme end of the spectrum, but you've got a hitter standing there in the box, 3-2 count, bases are loaded, he's down, his team's down by a run. He may wants to take an extra breath before he looks up at the pitcher, and he may not be thinking, holy shit, there's 9 seconds left on the clock, I've got to look up. And so, it's just like to your point, I get it, being prepared and understanding the situation, but in that moment, you're not thinking logically,
yeah. But you know what the casual fan's going to say? The casual fan's going to say, you're a professional for a reason. Like
Sure.
you're an MLB player. Like it's yeah. I know you don't want to increase the stress level. You don't want to put any added pressure that's already there. But I think that's what the average fan would say. It would just be like, well, that's why you get paid this much money.
Yeah. No. Again, I totally get it, but
I could almost argue for not having the pitch clock in the minors more, just because like that's the whole thing with the minors is development, right? So you don't want to rush that. You don't want to put like added pressure. Like obviously they need practice with the pitch clock if it's going to be in the majors long term. But I could almost argue more that it shouldn't be in the minors, if anything, just to allow that environment for development.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we could be sitting here, 6 months from now, and it never happens and it never comes up and everybody's just happy with it. So
can we go back to the regular size bases though? Can we do that?
Yeah. I've seen zero impact on that, to be honest.
I think the only reason they did that is to make it harder for managers to pick it up and throw it. I think that's the only reason they did it.
Yeah. I mean, stolen bases are up. So, I mean, it's doing something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doing something. True. So, anyway. Well, again, I mean, like always, we could sit here and talk about all this for hours, but that's why we'll continue to have more episodes. So,
as Cat Williams said, I got to go to work in the morning.
That's right. He said that for a different reason, if I recall. Oh, all right, man. Well, any last thoughts? Any closing words that we didn't get out or didn't say?
It's going to be a fun season. I think. I think for us specifically, this podcast has a couple teams that are going to be fun to watch. But I think in general, it's there's some new things to talk about. There's some new. Some teams that are probably going to be really good that haven't been in the past, so that's going to be fun. So yeah, it's going to be a fun ride to see what happens.
Yeah, man. Yeah, looking forward to it. Again, happy to be back on the podcast. We again apologize, as we said in the beginning, that we didn't get here sooner, but life happens, and that's kind of the beauty of why we started doing this anyway. We weren't trying to be a rigid thing, but hopefully we'll get back on a good schedule. We'll be putting out some good content. So yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, be sure to kind of follow us on our socials, Instagram, Twitter, trying to be active there as always. And then also, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, new email address. If you have any questions, comments, want to make any suggestions, anything like that, again, contact at first23rdpod.com. That's again, first23rdpod.com. And with that, we hope you have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully next week we'll get some more of the guys on. We'll share some of our preseason predictions, go through some of that good stuff, and who knows, maybe we'll have some new segments coming your way as well. So anyway, appreciate it. Barrick, always a pleasure, my friend. we will catch you guys next time.
Sounds good.
Peace.
See you.